Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to Hult's Virtual Skills Lab. While we wait for others to join, could you please tell us in the chat box where are you listening to us from? And when you do, please remember to send it to everyone so we can all read your messages and not only the host and panelists. Welcome, welcome. Oh, welcome, Giordano from Barcelona. So nice. I'm actually from Venezuela, but I'm based here in Miami. So Bologna, San Francisco. Oh, great. Welcome, Janet and Beatrice. Honduras. Welcome, Javier. Norway. Oh, wow. I love to see this diversity. Brazil. Welcome. Curitiba. Oh, nice. Ukraine, Bogota, Japan. Oh, another person from Japan. Wow, welcome. Thank you for being here with us today. Julio from Ecuador. Great. Welcome, welcome. So welcome to Hult's Virtual Skills Lab. My name is Ana Capdeville and I am the marketing manager for the Latin America region. And today I will be hosting this session with Professor Hap Klopp. So the Virtual Skills Lab is an online meeting space that is offering you the opportunity to skill up and get ahead from home. For those of you who are joining a Hult event for the very first time, I would like to give you a background about us. So Hult have designed a school that looks to the future by focusing on developing your leadership skills and building a global perspective that only first-hand experience can bring. If you would like to learn more about our programs, please visit our website at hult.edu. Today, we're joined by Professor Hap Klopp, as I just said, and we're going to explore the topic of building the iconic brand of the North Face. But before we begin, I would like to do a little bit of housekeeping. So a recording of the webinar will be sent to everyone in the next few days. This class will last approximately 45 minutes and then a live Q&A. If you have questions within the session, please let us know in the chat box and the Q&A box, and then we will take care of those at the end of the session. And now, without further delay, I would like to hand it over to Professor Hap.
Thank you, Anna. Good afternoon, good evening, depending where you are. It's various time of day. This is part of the new digital world. I'm Hap Klopp, as Anna said. I'm most known for having started and run the North Face for 20 years. After I sold it, and I've sold it, the VF Corporation now owns it. It's quite large, much larger than we ever anticipated it was going to be. Last quarter, they did 1.25 billion in turnover, and it's a pretty good run rate. When we started out the first year, it was $300,000 in sales. So quite a bit of growth since that time. After I sold the company, I got involved in a variety of activities. One was investing in and serving on boards of companies. If they were disruptive, that was attractive to me. I also set up a consulting company. We consult on strategy, on branding, on globalization of companies. I've run that. It's called HK Consulting, run that since that time. I also have written a couple of books, one on success called Conquering the North Face, one on failure called Almost. I mentor some businesses and help launch a number of them. And then I teach. I teach at various extension schools and regular schools. Teach at UC Berkeley Extension right now. I teach at Hult, which you can see the Boston campus over my shoulder. And to amplify on that, there's a reason I teach. Besides the joy of giving back, which I really appreciate, there's also some great things that Hult allowed me that really encouraged me to do it. The first one is I believe in globalization. I believe it's one of the mega trends of the future. And Hult is probably the most globalized university that I know of. I believe 130 different countries are represented on campus right now. And being part of that, I think, is really super. A second thing is that Hult really values practical knowledge. Now, I have an MBA from Stanford. I have a PhD. It's an honors PhD. But besides having that academic knowledge, I've amassed a lot of real life knowledge in my career at North Face, in other ways, certainly in the consulting, and certainly in terms of being involved with companies. And I think that is a lot to share, to give back and to provide to people. I often tell people that the best way to do things in business is to learn by other people, use OPM, other people's money, as a way to go forward. The third reason that I really like working at Hult is the flexibility they have. You can see above me the three Amigos. That reflects how I teach. I've co-taught for 10 years with Carlos Baradello and Paul Campbell. What we do when we co-teach is we give a diverse views on various topics based on different geography background, based on different industry background, based on different stage of business background. I was an entrepreneur, started in the US, expanded around the globe, but was really big at entrepreneurism and startup and what have you. Carlos was an Italian, grew up in Argentina, and then he got his master's in Europe and got his PhD at Carnegie Mellon, then went back to South America, Latin America, to run Motorola. He did a couple of startups down there, and now has two venture capital companies, one in Argentina and one in Chile. Our third partner, Paul Campbell, worked in M&A first for Hewlett Packard, and then after Hewlett, he worked in Europe for Philip Seaman. He's now running an innovation lab in Silicon Valley. All of us have similar thinking despite our diverse backgrounds, and we found it particularly beneficial for our students to look at things from different perspectives. As we got online, we found it worked even better. And frankly, I think when hybrid happens, it's going to be essential to the way people teach, because there's so much technology to manage and so many needs for shorter spaces, shorter times, shorter cases. We're working on all that. We're doing a project we call it EVE, Excellence in Virtual Education. We're trying to reinvent online education. I've been doing it for 18 months with a series of interns from Hult, and have come up with some pretty startling results, which we've tried in practice classes and will be bringing to the market shortly. Now, as I said, that's why I work at Hult. Before getting into comments about the iconic brand, I think I want to address a question that almost always comes up in Q&A, and we still will have Q&A the last 15 minutes. But the one question that I get, or two questions, are, why did I start the North Face, and what was my goal when I started the North Face? And I'll just give you that background briefly. You can ask more about it if you want, but I was always an outsider. And I mean that in two contexts of the words. One, I grew up in Spokane, Washington. I see one of the participants is in Spokane. You probably know that what you do in your spare time around Spokane is you're in the out of doors. I kayaked, I climbed, I skied, I hiked, I did all those things, but that's what you did on weekends. That's what you did on your vacations. That's what you did sometimes after school. And so I had that as a background. I thought I knew what a good product was. I thought I knew what people needed, and I saw what the joy of being in the outdoors was all about. The other outsider I was that basically my academic background and my growing up was quite different than other people. From the 5th grade on, they had me stop going to school at midday and allowed me to either do directed reading with things like Thoreau and Kant and Hegel and Marx, or I ran a school store. I think they had me step out of the class, not so much because I was smart, but because I was probably disruptive. But whatever it was, I was not like everybody else. I will say that part of what I learned by that really framed my thinking for how I would develop a business later on. I looked at doing things differently than somebody else and thought it was okay. And I thank those people that gave me that opportunity to do it. One of the things that I remembered from Thoreau's reading was his comment, "In wilderness is the preservation of the earth." And I really had that feeling when I went out in wilderness. I know that I came back energized, ready to change the world. And that was one of the things that I thought needed to be done, because at the time we started the North Face business, 1968, the cities were in turmoil. It was worse than today. We had people marching all the time. We were marching about the opposition to the Vietnam War, talking about the way we're defining the environment and whatever. Most people didn't care very much then, but we tried to bring that knowledge to the marketplace, and we did that. And so that was the context. That's what got me into where we were at the North Face. And so I then had the experience of what was I going to do, because as an outsider, one of the things that made me different at college was when I was in my senior year at Stanford undergraduate, my father died. And I ended up with the challenge of running the family company. We made wood windows, product sash door. We were small. I mean, we put all the windows in the Empire State Building. We put them in Chicago Merchandise Mart and Levittown, but we were small compared to the Boise Cascades of that day, the Weyerhaeusers, Anderson Window Wall. And so I now had 3 jobs. I was finishing my studies at Stanford. I was trying to run the company. And the third thing that I always joke about is I drank beer. And drinking beer with my friends was probably what I was good at. The rest I was aspiring to do. I ran it until I graduated, and I did a study while I was doing that. And part of my study was trying to figure out where and how we should position the company. I concluded after researching that we were going to have to make major changes. Among other things, we were going to have to invest tens of millions of dollars to move the facilities and acquire more timber. We had to move the facilities to get closer to timber. Originally, it was very close. Then everything was cut nearby. So we're going to have to do that. Secondly, what we're going to have to do is invest in brand building. Third, we were going to have to, frankly, change the management. And I've known most of those people since I'd grown up, but they were stale dated. They really didn't have contemporary concepts. Well, the idea of having to raise tens of millions of dollars, moving facilities, firing everybody was pretty daunting for somebody who was 20 years old. So I concluded what we needed to do was sell the company. So what I proceeded to do is I joined the MBA program at Stanford, and I studied. That was my first job. My second job was running the company. My third job was trying to sell the company. And my fourth job was the one I always gravitated back to, which was drinking beer with my friends. Again, that was the one I was good at. Fortunately, I was able to culminate the sale of the company between my first and second year at business school. It's a 2-year program there. And in doing that, I thought I was now positioned well to go into the business world. In truth, I thought somebody was going to offer me a chance to run their business. I mean, here I had the background of already having run a business. I was going to have a Stanford MBA, which was highly prized. And I expected lots of people to be coming to my door, but they didn't at all. And then I was faced with the challenge of what am I going to do with my business career? And what I devolved to was the idea that maybe I should work for a large company and then look around for entrepreneurial jobs to jump to. That's what MBAs were doing. Frankly, I didn't feel very comfortable with that. I thought it was disingenuous. I always believe you should put 120% in to anything you do. That sort of smacked of doing like 60% here, 40% there. But I kept looking around, particularly at CPG companies, because I had a flair for sales and marketing, and I really felt that that's where I could contribute. But many of the ideas I developed when I was growing up, when I was in this sort of outsider category, were ones I was looking for. For example, I worked at physical labor jobs when I was in high school because I wanted to be fit, make some money, and also experience the real world. I worked side by side with men and women doing the same job as men, seeing that women got paid half of what men were paid. That didn't make any sense to me. I also believed in sustainability. That's what you learn in the wilderness. But businesses were at that time doing planned obsolescence and throwing away product. I was looking for a company that was different in that regard. I was looking for a company that would hire people with diversity in mind. In fact, most of them were opposing that. I was looking at a company that actually had a commitment to changing society. So as I looked around and interviewed with them, I was uncomfortable, but the final nail in the coffin, if you will, was an interview I had with Procter Gamble. And Procter Gamble is the consumer goods company based in Cincinnati, Ohio. Cincinnati's a pretty sleepy area. I was in Silicon Valley, I was at Stanford, everything was moving fast. And then I was invited to the headquarters for the penultimate interview. And the joke, which everyone tells about Cincinnati, is that if I want to die, I want to die in Cincinnati because everything happens 2 years later there. Well, I was going from this fast-paced environment to the slower-paced environment, already having reservations when I got involved with the 8-hour process that they have, an hour each with 8 different people. They assess you, you assess them, and they decide at the end, is this going to be a match made in heaven? The first hour of my interview was with the head of HR, and his first comment to me, or his question to me, was, what is your name? Is it Hap or is it Kenneth? I see both of those on your CV. And I said, well, it could be either one, but most of my friends call me Hap. And he said, well, when you work here, it's going to be Kenneth, because nicknames don't give you the gravitas, they don't give you the authority necessary to manage older people. And that made me more uncomfortable and also pissed me off a little bit. And then he said, and of course you need to wear a white shirt and a tie. Well, I was wearing a white shirt and a tie. And if he didn't think I could figure out the game, why did they have me there? Also, I've never seen any productivity analysis that would ever say that white shirt and tie is more effective than not having one, as you can probably tell by the clothing I have now. And so I've decided I'm in the wrong place. I need to be out of here. And he asked me the question that I'm sure you've either heard or you will hear in your interviews. It was that question which said, if you were to join our organization, now he's looking up at the corner of the room as if communing with God. He said, if you were to join our organization, where do you envision you'd be in 5 years? Well, knowing I was out of there, I said, well, if, and I'd like to underscore the word if, I was to join Procter Gamble, I would expect to be president in 5 years. And that means passing you in about 5 minutes, which I don't think is any big deal. The remarkable thing out of that probably is they offered me a job, which tells you that what's more important than your CV is probably their hiring quota. But while I make a light of it, I pointed out as humor, it was actually the best interview I could possibly have. Most of the time when you interview at a company, they ask you, what do you want? And then they tell you, that's exactly what we have here. You take the job. Osmotically over time, it dawns on you that that isn't what they do at all. What this person did was lay out for me clearly what the environment was in this large company, the way they were doing things. I didn't see them committing to sustainability. I didn't see them committed to paying women the same as men. I didn't see them committed to these hiring practices that I believed in. I didn't see them trying to change the world. I saw them just trying to maximize profits. And as a result, I realized I couldn't work for them or other companies like them. And if I couldn't work for anybody else, then what I had to do was start a business around something and some product which I knew. Having spent all that time in the out of doors, that is what I did. I started a company around basically outdoor camping market. Initially, we made sleeping bags and tents and packs, and then we made some funky clothing as well. But that was something that I knew something about. It gave me a chance to create a company around the concepts I believed in. I didn't know how large it was going to be. All I cared about was it going to be large enough to be able to do good, to be able to bring in people, to surround myself with people who would be a challenge for me, who would be interesting to be around. And if we could do that, we'd let the company be as good as it could be, grow as much as it could, and we would see where we would go from there. And that led to really starting the North Face. And if you could pull up the first slide, part of what we were trying to do when we were doing that is we tried to stand out, be different, because the easiest way to build a brand is by being different than anybody else. That's kind of what my brand was when I was in grade school and didn't go to school until the afternoon. Well, we made a logo, which you may know, we'll show you later on. It was based on the shape of one of the mountains in Yosemite Valley. You can see it in this picture from Ansel Adams. This is actually a blow-up photo we had, which was about 5 feet by 10 feet, that we put in the lobby of our first office building. It said something about what we stood for. But we believed in building a brand. I believed in building a brand because I believed a brand was an annuity for the future. A brand is not just a logo. It's not just a tagline. It's not just marketing and graphics. A brand properly done is your DNA. It's what you stand for. And if you're really good at it, what you do is perpetuated over time, repeatedly, consistently doing things in the same way with the same set of values. As you do that, brands are like coral. They grow very slowly. People don't see them changing, but at a certain point, they are so unique, they're beautiful, and they're so unique, there's nothing like them, and it becomes almost a monopoly. And that's what you want in business. You want to create something that is unlike what anybody else has. But as I said, we did come up with a logo, and if you show the next slide, you'll see the logo which we chose at first. When we started the company, I took over some stores that existed, so I'd have cash flow, but then immediately set about developing our own product line. We didn't have a logo that would work, so I went to a graphic designer just out of school, Dave Alcorn, and he came up with 10 options. We had to choose one of them. We didn't have time to go through anything more, and this is the one we chose. Now, he went on to a very successful graphics career. He didn't have any at that time, but he ultimately became the head of Merrill Lynch's internal graphics program, did it for other companies as well. We were lucky we got that and we developed it. Now, as I said, you have to do things consistently over time in the same way. The next slide will show you there's only one change we ever made to the logo. And that was for certain applications, we put a red background in a rectangular shape around the logo. We did that because the logo itself is a little unbalanced. And in some applications, whether it's on the front of a store or if it was on a hang tag or a swing tag or something, it didn't work so well. So for those applications, we did a rectangle, which created a shape that we could put behind it. And that logo then was the one that from day one, when we started until this very day, has remained the same. That was the first part about the consistency, the repetitiveness of what we're trying to do, because a brand is persistently and consistently developing the company in ways that really improve the number of people you see, but never change what the DNA is that you're talking about. And then the next aspect is, frankly, to be able to be sure you have the DNA defined, because if you can do that, then everybody you touch, whether it's your employees, whether it's your customers, your vendors, your suppliers, will be touched in the same way with those same things. And that is what leads to building a strong brand, one that is iconic, one that lives forever. The way I approached it is always looking for 3 words that represent the DNA, and then asking people across the company, how do you apply that where you are? Now, the way we did that, the method that we did that, was through a long-range planning process that we held every 2 years. And during that process, we focused on 2 things. One is the financial metrics, sort of the quantitative goals that we're setting up, but we devoted an equal or maybe a disproportionate amount of time to the values, to the qualitative goals. And the qualitative goals were undermined by the words that we came up with that we're able to apply to our business. And the reason we did that was so that we could level set all of the employees in the same way. The reality is, every time you bring in a new employee, they have a chance to either build on what you're doing or distract you from which direction you're going. New people coming in, particularly the best people, have their own ideas, and that's great, except you can't do or run a business 4 or 5 different ways. You have to have one approach. So what I would say at the end of all of these long-range planning meetings, which was really exciting to new people, a little bit boring to people who've been around because it was redundant. But what I would say is, okay, now that we've decided, I hope we're so clear with what we said that some of you leave the business and we'll help you find a job elsewhere. And I say that not because you're not great employees. I say that because if you have different ideas, we don't want you to try to divert the company, because we won't change from where we've decided today for at least 2 years, and maybe not after that. So if you have a different way of doing business, we'll introduce you to companies that run their business in that way. We'd much rather have you happy and have you devoting your energy to building the companies in that fashion. So the 3 words that we chose at North Face, or I chose, and that I put behind the qualitative development that we had, were disruption, quality, and triple bottom line. And by triple bottom line, what I mean is an equal commitment to your people, to your profits, to your planet. said today, it's kind of people, planets, profits. I'll try to identify each of those and tell you how we applied them and what it meant. But the other thing I want you to know is the way we got those out, once we decided what they were, we got them out by choosing stories and doing storytelling around it, because great leaders use storytelling to be able to communicate something. It's much easier to remember a story than it is some lengthy mission statement that was written by 20 people that looks more like an anagram than actually something you're motivated by. And storytelling has been used forever. It's what the Bible and other religious publications were about, but it's a way to apply something that's not specific, but a concept to a variety of other applications. And so we would look at those words, disruption, quality, and triple bottom line, look at how they affected the company. Once we decided, we'd ask everybody in every division, how do you apply that? So in the case of disruption, very easy to think about it in terms of product, and that is what launched the company. Our first product was lightweight camping gear. What I knew was if the gear was light enough, people would not go 200 feet into the wilderness, which they did in camping. They go miles into the wilderness. And the further they went in, the more I thought they would follow Thoreau's dictates of saving the world in the wilderness. To do that, we needed to facilitate it by lightweight gear. So we took initially some materials from the Vietnam War. We took aircraft aluminum and we made tent poles and pack frames out of it. We took parachute cloth, and a parachute cloth we made into sleeping bags. We made it into tents. We made it into some funky clothing. And in doing that, what we were able to do was actually come up with a lightweight kit that people could carry. It ultimately created what would be known as a remarkable differentiated product. When I say differentiation, from the first day of our company, we thought about differentiation. That's the easiest way to build a brand. If you're not like anybody else, people will notice you. So everything we did, we tested against that claim of being differentiated. And if you go to the next slide, you can see when we launched our first store, what we did in that first store is we had a breakout party at the beginning. That party invited everybody from a cross section. It wasn't just climbers and mountaineers and whatever. It was anybody that was anybody in the community. We used the Hells Angels as door people there. You can see somebody in the background in a suit, some other people in cowboy hats, some Hells Angels. The next slide will show you we had a band there. We took a local band that wasn't well known at that time. It was called the Grateful Dead. That's Jerry Garcia, you can see with all the hair there. But now we were creating something that was bigger than the product, that was bigger than the name. We were doing something that really stood out, that was really quite different. The second thing that we wanted to be able to push these ideas forward was passion. We wanted all of our employees to be passionate about what we're doing, because passion is what you remember when you can't remember the words. How committed am I? How committed is my team to doing what we say? And we wanted to make sure that was foremost. None of the people that I hired initially had any business training, but what they had is a passion for either the out of doors, or they had a passion for changing the world, which was part of our overall mission. If you go to the next slide, it's sort of a story that tells you the level of commitment we wanted in passion. A friend of mine, he was a skier, Dickie Buick. He was a great ski racer, but more important than that, he was the one everybody followed. Whenever Dickie showed up in town skiing, everybody was talking around the bars, Dickie's in town, let's go find him. We've got to ski with him. He was the one that everybody followed. That's the passion that you want. That's the passionate leader that you want. Well, one day Dickie was practicing for a downhill race. He had his downhill skis on, and he got on the wrong run, and he got on a ski jump run. Well, being Dickie Buick and being the person he is, he said, I think I can make this work with my downhill skis, even though they don't have the right aerodynamics. And I'd like to see what happens. Well, he took off down the run. The dynamics didn't work. He ended up flying off the ski jump, hit a tree 30 feet in the air, crashed to the ground, and they hauled him in on the sled to the doctor. And he said, Doc, patch me up. I've got a race tomorrow. And the doctor said, well, Dickie, I'm not sure you understand. you're not going to be racing tomorrow because you're going to have a full-length cast on your leg. And Dickie said, Doc, you don't understand. I'm Dickie Buick. I race. And Doc said, well, how are we going to accomplish that? Dickie said, it's very simple. Just put that cast in the shape of a racing tuck, put it with that bend in there, and I'll ski. And he did ski. Now, he didn't win because you have to be nimble in that, but that was the sort of passion that Dickie had. That was the leadership that we wanted, the sort of leadership we wanted in our company from all of our employees, from me, from all of the people I surrounded myself with. If they had that passion, I knew I could teach them about business. I could use my MBA training. I could use my time running our family company. And when we had our long-range planning, I would bring in people from business schools, bring in people from business, bring in people from all walks of life to be able to educate them on what they're doing. And so we did that. As I said, we launched initially what would be an outdoor company. You might find that a little humorous because today I think most people think of it as an apparel company, but it still maintains its hard good division, which is sleeping bags, tents, and packs. It has some footwear. It has items like that. But as I said, we were trying to look at how do we differentiate? How do we differentiate in all aspects of what we're doing? The product, which I will come to in a moment, was only a small part of what we did, although the most visible part. We differentiated in terms of our business model. We were omni-channel from day one. We sold through our own stores, we sold through a catalog, which is a precursor to online, and we sold wholesale. No company did that at that time. In fact, people were saying that's heresy. You can't sell and compete against your customers. Well, you look around today, every brand has its own store. It is all omni-channel. People are working online, but we had that as a concept. Our business model was differentiated. Our employee practices were differentiated too. We spoke 14 languages at all times in our factory so we could hire the best people no matter where they were from. We had an employee stock ownership plan where every employee had some ownership in the company itself. We had those sorts of concepts, and we have quality that was beyond what anybody else was putting out. Come to that later on. So anyway, the first products that we really wanted to develop, the ones that really gave us a reputation, were the ones I mentioned, using materials from the Vietnam War. But then to enhance it, we decided that we would convert tents. And if you go to the next slide, it'll introduce how we did that. When we realized our tent sales were slowing down, I went to Buckminster Fuller, who is a design philosopher genius, came up with the concept of geodesics and tegrity, came up with a new math based on nature, in which every number is discrete. One is a triangle, two is a rectangle. And as part of that, he built structures that utilize natural structures, use the triangle to be able to build it into the strongest possible tent. His designs, geodesic designs, actually physically get stronger as they get larger. Every other physical structure does not. Well, when I went to Bucky, I said, Bucky, you say that geodesic structures encompasses a maximum amount of space with a minimum amount of materials. That sounds to me like a tent. He said, oh, it very well could be. And I said, well, okay, would you design one for us? And he said, Hap, I'd love to, but I'm spending my time trying to change the world. However, if you could put a team together, I would mentor that team so they can build it. Well, we had a lot of people who are Bucky followers. This picture shows Bucky at our factory. The person who is right on his by his side there with the beard is Bruce Hamilton, who'd actually taken a year off from working at the North Face to follow Bucky around wherever he went to learn more about Bucky. The head of design, who's the person in green there next to him, was also a follower of Bucky, and he loved to be able to incorporate it. We were able to use those principles to create a tent that was unlike any other one out there. First of all, it was stronger. Second of all, it was visually more attractive, and it had a number of applications. The next slide shows you what tents looked like when we started that. And we call it an A-frame tent. It's called the Tuolumne tent. And if you can advance to that, that is the A-frame tent. What we said is we can make a tent that is more interesting, more valuable, stronger than that. And what we came up with is a tent that you see in the next slide. And if you advance it, that's the geodesic tent. You can see that it's a lot more interesting. We could make it to whatever size you needed because it got stronger as it got larger. And then once we introduced it, Again, we wanted to differentiate. We didn't want just to have a tent out there and create a brochure and give it to salespeople. We wanted to do something which would be really novel and unique, and one that would add to the storytelling about building the brand. So Anna, if you would advance to the next slide, you show what we did. We brought Buckminster Fuller to our facilities. We created a tent much larger than anything we were going to sell. And then we had all of our employees come in at various times for Bucky to explain what the concepts were, how revolutionary our ideas were, and how this was going to change the world in backpacking, going to change the world of camping, and also basically change the world of construction. We did that. We used Bucky. It was a great way to be able to advance the company and to advance the concepts that we were doing. So we used disruption. And then the next thing we used was quality. I believe that the most sustainable, most environmentally responsible product was a product that lasted a lifetime, even better than one made from recycled materials. If it never goes into the landfill, to me, that's the optimum in terms of an environmental product. I also believe that it made more sense than this throwaway world. So we came out with a product that lasted for a lifetime. We put a lifetime warranty on it. Very novel, very differentiating. And by doing that, we then created something that was value oriented as opposed to price oriented. Yes, it was more expensive than other products out there, but when you explained it was going to last much longer, and if you divided it by the number of times you used it, people realized that they were getting a much greater value. That was what the company was built on, because we didn't want to have price competition as being where we defined ourselves. We wanted to make the best and stand for the best. I will tell you, making the best is perhaps the easiest way to market. Why? Because there are so few people pursuing it, particularly in today's market, where like on Amazon and others, many things are transactional and people are just looking for price. If you can communicate the story, if you can have a product that justifies the values later on, you're going to be one amongst many and you're going to stand out. The next slide I have is kind of a story to be able to underscore how simple it is to do that. As I said, that's the best brand positioning of all, to be the best, to be the highest quality. Well, the story, which we told as part of the storytelling to build what we were doing, is about this cup of coffee. One of the visual merchandisers who North Face worked with was Peter Glenn. And Peter was traveling the world. He was in Tokyo. And those of you who travel know about 2 p.m. when you're traveling, you can kind of get the slows and you need a little caffeine or something to be able to build you up, to give you the energy for the rest of the day. Well, he happened to be in the Ginza area of Tokyo, which has no little small coffee shops. It has a lot of high-rise buildings, generally department stores, a lot of neon. And he thought, well, rather than just wait for a coffee shop, I'll go to the top of department stores. Usually when you get there, what you will find is that there's a restaurant of some sort. Coffee isn't that great, but if it has caffeine, it'll be good enough. Well, he got there and sure enough, there was a restaurant. But more important than that, he was really impressed. People greeted him. They greeted him in his own language. He thought that was impressive. They seated him quickly, which he liked. They gave him a hot towel. And he started thinking, you know, if I had this sort of service, if we gave hot towels in the US, we'd probably sell more coffee. But he still wasn't expecting a great cup of coffee. But quickly, one came out. The aroma was very strong. And then he looked down on that cup of coffee, and there, on the top of the cup of coffee, was a dollop of whipped cream sculpted like a rose bud. And he started smiling and thinking, this is fantastic. And he started to stir. And they said, no, sir, please wait for a moment. And when I waited, the heat of the coffee turned the rose bud into a rose petal. Why would you go any other place for a cup of coffee? That's what quality is all about. And frankly, understanding the consumer and what they want and creating a product for them is the key to doing it. That's what design thinking is all about, which is deep customer empathy. That is what we did at North Face. All the people we hired, like myself, had time in the outdoors. We know what people are looking for, and that's what we put into our product. The third thing that we did, the word was triple bottom line: equal commitment to people, to the environment, to society. I'm proud to say that of the people who started the company, none of whom had business training, all of whom had passion, brilliance. They had passion for the outdoors. They had passion for doing something right. They had the passion for changing the world. 11 of those people ended up either starting or running other outdoor companies. One started Mountain Hardware, another one ran Birkenstock, another lady ran a company called Title IX, which is a women's sports program for active sports that they developed. Another one ran Thule Ski Rack Company, and on and on. 11 of those people ran other companies. We trained them, as I said, in each long-range planning, we brought in people to help educate them. I helped educate them on what things were, and then we let them go ahead and make their own decisions. The next thing we did was basically we committed to doing things for the environment. And we were preachers for the environment. Frankly, there was a lot of pushback. People, even more than today, people would describe us as tree huggers, and they would describe us as granola lovers. And, you know, they joke about the fact that you must have dirty fingernails because you're in the outdoors all the time. It didn't bother us a whole lot, except one thing. It meant we weren't getting our message across the way we wanted. And we thought one of our goals was to educate people to save the planet. So what we did, and Anna will show you the next slide, is we created a sort of a reverse award. As opposed to a positive telling them what to do, we created the Ice 9 Award. Ice 9 was predicated on a book by Kurt Vonnegut, the American novelist and also a humorist. He wrote a book called The Cat's Cradle, in which the principal was someone who had this great invention that was going to convert all of the water in the world into ice. Now, of course, that was going to destroy the world, but it was such a great invention that he just had to keep going, even though he was going to destroy the world. Well, in that vein, what we did is create the Ice 9 Award, and each year we gave it to the most environmentally destructive organization or individual in the world. We gave it one year to the US Congress, and you can imagine the feedback we got. We believed that commitment to the environment was good. The next thing we committed to was the concept of society, giving back, creating something that was worthwhile. If you go to the next slide, you will see, Anna, you will see there, here's some things we did. There was a peace march across the country. We gave 1,000 tents to people who walked from the West Coast of the United States to the East Coast for nuclear disarmament, anti-Vietnam War, to be able to do that. We were a company that when AIDS came out, people thought of it as a homosexual disease. They wouldn't address it properly. We had to do an AIDS awareness, we thought, to make people realize what it was and what it wasn't. We put on big benefits. We put our name behind it, this macho company. We ended up having a big sale in San Francisco. Thousands of people came. We gave $750,000 of that money to the San Francisco AIDS Foundation. What we did is we said we had a commitment to society that transcends everything. Certainly our hiring practices were the same. All the things I talked about before, we instilled in the company. We paid women the same as men. We didn't care where somebody came from. The fact we spoke 14 languages allowed us to bring people in from anywhere who were the best. LBQ, whatever you name it, they could work for us if they were great. And we became the employer of choice because of the way we were. In fact, it made it much easier than anything we did. And so we had this commitment to society. We had this commitment to the environment. We constantly would ask everybody to figure out how they could do a better job inside the company, outside the company, to be able to build on that. And what we built, frankly, was a company that stood for something. And then we went out, we used influencers the way you have today. We were kind of a forerunner on influencers, but we used people who were doing remarkable things. Next couple of slides will quickly show you that, and then we'll get to Q&A. But we had people that looked at venturing in the new ways. They went to the top of Mount Everest, of course. I say, of course, people weren't doing that a lot, but we sponsored them like Ned Gillette. Ned was also somebody in the next slide who came up with a creative way to get from South America to the Antarctic. He rowed across that strait in a boat he made on his own. Anna, if you show that one. And then the next one shows you when we backed expeditions. We backed one expedition that went to Everest, and we asked them to bring back more trash than they took up. Because if you're in Kathmandu, what you will see is there's a lot of oxygen bottles and things left over because people only worried about getting to the top. Well, we said, if we're going to send expeditions somewhere and they're going to stand for the North Face, they have to stand for our principles. So if you show the next slide, besides bringing more trash back, we also did the first women's team ascent of Annapurna, also the first one to go to the top of Mount Everest. One of our employees joined the group that was going to the top of Everest. Didn't make it all the way, but was part of it. We backed the women's ascent to be able to come up with things because we believed women should be treated the same as men, and that's how we did it. We created new ideas, new ways of things. If you go to the next slide, it wasn't just skiing that we outfitted people in. We decided to outfit extreme skiers. These were the people initially who were doing flips off of cliffs and whatever. They were the forerunners to what you saw in the Olympics last week. All of the slope style, all of the aerials and acrobatics. We created that whole era. We created a line that was specifically suited to help them. We called it extreme gear, and we're able to develop it. So we created unique things. We created our own business. We did things in a differentiated way. We constantly put stories behind it, and we told those stories as part of building the brand. And it was always tied back to our heritage, our DNA, what we stood for. So with that being said, that's sort of the end of my prepared remarks. We have some time for Q&A. I'd ask Anna if she would kind of open it up and if she would handle the questions if they're in chat and file them to me, and I will try and respond to the questions that you have. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you for that. So now it is time for Q&A. If you guys would like to start asking questions, you can write it in the chat box, and you can also write in the Q&A box, and then we will start with that. Also, if you want, you can also raise your hand and we can give you permission to speak, and you can ask your own question. Okay, we have one attendee. Okay, Floris, he wants to talk to you, Professor. So
great. Hi, Flory.
Hi, Hap. Thank you for the chat so far. It's been really interesting. And you know, as it's so focused on branding, I was just really curious to hear your opinion from both a branding perspective and maybe also from your original perspective, personal as a founder, about the collaboration between the North Face and Gucci, which, you know, if you ask me, are really two brands on the far ends of the spectrum when it's about garment or fashion. So I was really curious to hear about that.
It's a very good question. And at the outset, we would not have done those collaborations. They have done a number of collaborations. They did one first with Supreme, and then they did the one with Gucci. And today they're launching another one with a brand called KAWS, K-A-W-S. Their desire in doing that was to extend to different groups, different demographic groups. They found that their age of their existing consumer was getting older. And so they collaborated with Supreme to be able to take their products to a younger group. They collaborated with Gucci so that their products would, in fact, be interpreted as not just function, but also fashion, because Gucci, of course, was known for fashion. And then with KAWS, it's a similar thing, coming up with an entirely unique product. What they did, however, was hold their partners to meeting the same quality standards in terms of lifelong warranty and whatever. So they didn't abandon their DNA, but they used that as a marketing lever to get new demographics into their company. They've been quite successful from an acquisition of new customers as a result of it. In fact, the new KAWS thing, which they launched today, the entire product line is already all sold out. Thank you, Flores.
Thank you. Thank you for answering.
okay, we have another person who would like to raise your hand.
Great.
Hey, Professor, thank you for taking the time. I really like your presentation. My question is not focused more on the branding side of the business and your experience, but it's more about the future and future of apparel, especially considering from the perspective of American consumers. My question is on the supply chain situation we have today, and the breakdown we've seen over the last year and a half, and how apparel companies and maybe even North Face and VF are looking to tackle this, and how are they planning to keep their costs somewhat the same, or maybe are they thinking of adjusting to the supply chain disruptions with price raises?
Well, it's a great question. It's a very a many-sided question. One is supply chain. One has to do with product and product nature, because many of the products made with petroleum-based products are ending up in landfills and also ending up in the water when they break down. What you will see in the future is there's going to be more close-to-home manufacturing. So if you're a global company and you sell in Asia, you may produce in Asia. If you're in the US, you may produce in the Western region to be able to do that. And they're doing some of that at North Face, but the other companies are doing it. A second thing is a big movement around sustainability and circularity. We started it way back when, but it is nothing like what you see today. Programs are being installed for recycling. Patagonia encourages people to buy less, but to buy more effective for less for a long time to be able to do that. Also, there's a shift away from some of the petroleum-based products to more natural products with a natural heritage, ones that can be recycled, ones that can be built or whatever. Materials rather than petroleum-based, you might use bamboo, or you might use hemp, or something which is a crop that can be developed to move out there. So the company is focused on circularity. They're focused on reducing the carbon footprint, which includes manufacturing closer to home. So not only do you have supply chain reductions, but you don't have the carbon impact of producing and delivering things from a long way away.
That answers my question. Thank you, Professor.
Sure, and thank you for the question.
Perfect. Next, we have Elias.
Hello, Professor. Nice to meet you. My question is, what's your best experience with to be the founder of North Face? If you see within business, what's your best outcome of doing that?
Well, I think the thing I'm most proud of is the fact that, as I mentioned, that 11 of the people that started with me in the early days of North Face learned enough in terms of how to run a business and learned enough about some of the principles that we employed to employ them in successful businesses elsewhere. That made me feel like we'd really done something good and that we're building something that could grow. I think the second thing is that we were an early harbinger of a triple bottom line, a commitment to doing things in the right way. For business to thrive in the future, that is going to be essential. And when I look at the marketplace right now, frankly, the people we sold to then, the people of my age, still don't quite get it, or they do it, or they pay lip service to it. The younger consumers understand it. They understand the impact of climate change. They understand the impact of plastics going to the ocean. They understand what happens when you put everything into landfills. And that is the consumer of the future. And that is the market of the future. And the companies that grab onto that, that live by that, and live through the teething stages, which are always difficult, are going to find they're the winners in the long term. And it feels great to me to be part of the sort of that righteous movement and be, in my own mind, one of the people that instigated it.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for the answer. Hope you have a great day.
Yes.
Thank you, Elias. And now we will get the last question. Okay, so I'm going to give permission to speak to Beatrice.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly.
So it's a pleasure. So first of all, thank you for your speech. It was really, really good to hear. And I wanted to ask you, what's the most difficult situation in which you were in, and how you overcame that?
Well, whenever you're an entrepreneur, whenever you start a business, it's a series of linked recoveries. There's always something out there. And if you ever get a chance to look at it, look at something called the Greiner curve, Greiner. And it's a description of what you have in business, where it shows that as you grow and improve the business, you solve a set of problems, and in the solution you bring in, you create another set of problems, and they keep popping up. So you never really get to a perfect state. But from my own standpoint, probably the most challenging time was I'd just gone through a refinancing of the company, and I had not gone skiing all winter long because it takes 6 months to do a financing and you have to be on top of it all the time. And so I finally had the money in an escrow account, and I headed with my family to Vail to go skiing. And in the morning, I get a call. I'm just about to go on the slopes, and I get a call from one of my employees saying, "Are you sitting down?" And usually when somebody says that, you know that next news is not going to be good. I said, "Well, yeah, I am. Why?" He said, "Well, the roof fell in." I said, "Are you talking about literally or figuratively?" And he said, "No, literally, the roof fell in. We had a rainstorm last night. The water backed up on the roof and the factory and over the offices. It cracked all of the beams. The water came pouring in. It fried all of the computers. It destroyed many of the products we had in there. The fire department will not let anybody go into the facility. We have orders that we need to get out tomorrow. We don't even know what the orders are. We can't find them. And on top of that, we can't get all the product out there. And we don't know if the insurance company will cover this. And if so, how long it's going to take." And so my first response was, "Okay, well, I'm going to go skiing today, and then tomorrow I'll get after this." And so that's what I did. And I went back and I had this commitment. I had this team. I knew that if we brought the team together, we could solve it. I didn't know how we were going to solve it, but I knew that we had this approach to do it. We set about doing anything and everything we could to succeed. We went to our customers and we said, "Could you tell us what our orders were? We're just checking. And oh, by the way, we might be a little late because we've had a few hiccups here, but like to know that." We went to the University of California, which was right next door of our facility, got computer experts. We had them going through recreating the insides of our computer to see what we could find. At night, when the fire department wasn't around, we sent in SWAT teams to get whatever inventory we could out of the factory and to be able to get every raw materials that we had. We went to customers or to suppliers and said, "Quick, send us additional materials so we can make things to fill in. We don't quite know when we can pay you, but we've always been good for it. Quickly send those goods to us." We did all of those things. We created it. We solved. We came out of it. I mean, at the outset, you'd say, "I don't know how this is going to happen." In the middle of it, you're going to say, "I don't know how this is going to happen." But at the end, we did it as a team, and we all remembered that we overcame it. And frankly, it made us more resilient. It made us more confident in our own overall capabilities.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Professor. So we have reached the last minute of our session today. I want to thank you all for being here with us today and joining, and a special thank you to Professor Hap for taking the time to have this presentation with us today and being this 1 hour with us. It's been great, amazing presentation. Thank you, everyone, and we hope to see you soon.
Good. And if anybody wants to connect with me, I am on LinkedIn. I love to be able to help people in what they're doing. And if you're at Hult, would love to see you there. Thank you very much for the opportunity to chat.
Bye-bye, everyone. Have a nice day. Thank you.